Mercy Mirembe, she's a professor of performing arts.
Oh. The good thing, she's the last presenter. Maybe as we are in the pipeline, she will come along.
I was not even able to get her from the registration list to send her a special link. So she's one of the person that we have not been able to get out to.
Excuse me, Chair. Chair.
Yes, please.
Okay, so I'm supposed to be the first presenter, but we are actually two. So my colleague would be presenting. I'm just telling you this so that when you hear a man's voice, you don't wonder whether my voice has changed. Okay.
So Anatoly Rwasampija.
Yes, yes, okay. He'll be the one to do a presentation. Thank you.
Okay.
Chair.
Yes. Yes, please.
I think Professor also could be in a mix-up. Two links were shared for this presentation.
Okay.
Because when I checked, there was one scheduled for 12:10, the same session. And then now this one of 11:55. So maybe if you can inquire from Isaac.
Okay, let me call Isaac.
I have got Professor this side.
Oh, okay.
I'm promoting her to a panelist.
Okay. We have 4 minutes to start.
Chair, I think we are all here.
Okay. So good afternoon. Is it already good afternoon? Yes. Good afternoon, Session C members. I welcome you to our Session 2C, whose theme is Humanities, Pedagogies, and Curricula. I think in Humanities, we appreciate the fact that it's not enough to know what we are teaching, but we should also pay special attention or equal attention to how we teach. That is the pedagogies. So we have 4 presenters for today. We have 90 minutes. So each person, if we are to exhaustively present and discuss what has been presented, each person will be given 15 minutes. We shall present in a row from presenter 1 to presenter 4 straight away. And then I will be registering the questions that will be posted in the Q&A. Please note that's where the questions and discussions and additions and subtractions can take place. So after all the 4 presentations, that is when we shall have the discussion of whatever has cropped up in the Q&A or in the chat room. So I welcome you. And our first presenter today is Anatoly Rwasampija, this is a dual presentation with Pamela Kanapa. and they are tackling living and working in a knowledge-driven time, a reflection on the vocational academic divide in Uganda. So let's welcome Anatoly. You can briefly introduce yourself and then go ahead and make your presentation, and you have a maximum of 15 minutes. Thank you. Welcome, Anatoly. Is Anatoly with us? Pamela? Pam?
Hello.
I can't
Yes.
see Anatoly.
No, he's here because we got a link as one, and so he's going to use this. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you all very much, Chair. And good afternoon, everyone. I am Anatoly Lwasa, just for introduction, a graduate fellow from the Department of History and Archaeology, Makerere University. And for this presentation, we are looking at a paper entitled Living and Working in a Knowledge-Driven Time, a reflection on the vocation academic divide in Uganda, 1911 to 2020. And in this, we try to unravel the history of contestations on curriculum, that is between vocational or academic education. And for starters, we draw on the recent debates in 2020, in February 2020, when the Uganda Ministry of Education instructed secondary schools to implement the new lower secondary school curriculum, which targeted skill acquisition among students. However, owing to the legendary desire of Ugandans for education, the implementation of the new curriculum elicited varied responses from politicians, government officials, school administrators, teachers, civil society, parents, and anybody else or any other Ugandan who cared to question the relevance and preparedness of this curriculum. So we see that on 4th February, out of these contestations, the Parliament passed a resolution to halt and postpone the implementation of this new curriculum. However, about a week later, the Cabinet resolved not to backtrack on the execution, and amid these controversies and contestations and tensions, the new lower secondary school curriculum was implemented, bringing forth varied mixed reactions. And one of the reactions was covered in the Independent magazine, and that was for one Christopher Muganga Kagolo, who welcomed the new curriculum because it is competent-based and learner-centered, as opposed to the old one, which emphasized rote learning and subject content. So we try to use the recent debates as an entry point to unravel or to understand the history of contestations regarding the type of education Ugandans sought to attain at different historical periods. However, prior to these recent debates or these recent curriculum changes, we observe that the NRM government has since 2004 shifted emphasis to sciences and practical subjects. And according to the Ministry of Education plan, secondary school curriculum was to be revised into two phases, that is, integrating and merging several subjects without compromising quality. And the second involved introduction of more vocational subjects to increase marketability of O-level leavers, and that is in regard to secondary school curriculum. However, regarding higher education, President Museveni, once a student of arts, but now a champion of sciences, has for years kept branding several university arts courses as useless courses, attracting debate about the relevance of humanities. And in August 2014, while launching a modern laboratory at Ndejje University in Luwero, Museveni criticized humanity courses at the university as useless, saying that, I quote, "Graduates from such departments can hardly solve anything to steer national development," end of quote. So therefore, Museveni advised private universities to teach courses that impart life skills and sciences in line with the country's increased need for professionals. Still, recently, in January 2020, Museveni reiterated his call to universities to focus on sciences rather than humanities, as he was meeting vice chancellors of public universities and Ministry of Education officials. I quote, he said, "If you focus on sciences, funding is easy. There is no way we can fail to fund science education," end of quote. So we see that this has been somewhat kind of thought of the NRM government and Museveni regarding what education Ugandans should consume during this time. However, we also note that on the contrary, the same president in May 2015 made a U-turn towards art subjects, advising students at Kashaka Girls SS in Mbarara not only to concentrate on excelling at science subjects, but also arts. He is quoted to have said in a speech delivered that sciences alone cannot transform and take Uganda where it desires to be. You realize that science is essential in development and modernization, but modernization must take place in society, and society is built on humanities. So from this speech, we observe that in spite of constantly bashing humanities, Museveni appreciates that sciences and arts are not mutually exclusive. And that's the very reason he is seen to advise learners at this time not to prioritize science subjects, but also excel in humanities. So, drawing from Museveni's contradictory statements, we observe that he is coming from a position of marginalizing humanities, later on to encouraging the study of humanities. And this provides a stark contrast on education, and it reflects on the long-held debates on the vocational academic divide in Uganda. Therefore, this paper observes that the debates on whether to go vocational or academic or integrate both education systems are not new, but they have a long history right from the initial stages of introduction of formal schooling in Uganda. The paper labors to analyze the evolution of these debates, and it also seeks to understand reasons for contestations or contradictions between vocational academic education and the factors that influence people's perceptions and choices. In one way, we also urge that in spite of the advocacy for sciences and vocational subjects by various colonial and post-colonial governments in Uganda, majority Ugandans continue to reject this type of education. Why? And to answer this kind of question, we draw on the case of St. Joseph's Technical Institute, Kisubi, to understand the resilience of vocational education in spite of the general disregard of vocational education. Just for a background, we note that a reading of Uganda, from the readings of Uganda's history, there are a lot of struggles over curriculum change. And these struggles date way back from missionary days. The debates on what was to be taught, why it was to be taught, who was to be taught, and how they were to be taught what have kept on evolving. So we know that initially, African indigenous education endeavored to impart basic practical skills. And this kind of education was replaced by missionary education when the missionaries introduced Western type of education in 1877. And at this time, there was a temporary break from the indigenous education curriculum because the missionaries basically intended to spread, it is just common knowledge that the missionaries intended to spread Christianity through their education and all the principles of Christianity. So in conformity to this, the education report, the annual education report of 1925 notes that the idea that dominates the mission schools may be summed up clearly and concisely, first and foremost, that the spiritual interests of the child are paramount to every other matter, and that these divine interests are supreme. End of quote. So we see that according to Walter Rodney and Sylvia Tamale, any other education aims of missionary education were secondary, and they were only byproducts of teaching Christianity. In this paper, we see that the first contest regarding the curriculum comes up in 1925, and that was after the Feldstock Commission made recommendation after examining the situation of education in Uganda. The commission pointed out that, I quote, the missionaries have failed to relate their education activities to the community needs of the people by concentrating on literary education and nearly neglected the teaching of agriculture and technical skills. End of quote. Therefore, the commission advised that there was need to focus on education for adaptation to the environment, and that the protectorate government...
A reminder that you have 5 minutes left.
Okay, 5 minutes left. Thank you so much. And that the protectorate government had to step up and direct the course of education. So resultantly, there was a move by the protectorate government to direct education policies. And we saw that from 1925, the protectorate government was seen to shift to agricultural and technical skills in primary schools and also in secondary schools. However, still, studies on education in Uganda tend to always blame missionary education and colonial education for the too much literal education. And in a way, they skip or they don't pay attention to the demands by the local Africans. It were the Africans, it were us, the Ugandans, per se, that kept on demanding for literary education. A case in point is in Gayaza, where a CMS school for girls at the time of its inception had quite a skill-based curriculum philosophy known as hand to mind. That is, one had to move from manual work to the alphabet and other rudiments of learning, from practical to the abstract. However, it were parents who were taking children to Gayaza who opposed this kind of curriculum. In a report of the CMS, one mother who had a daughter at Gayaza is quoted to have said that our daughters are daughters of chiefs. Why should they work? They must sit still and look after their body complexions. That aside, even when the protectorate government made efforts to emphasize agriculture and teaching and technical skills in primary and also junior schools, missionary schools wholeheartedly supported these efforts by teaching agriculture and technical skills. A case in point was in Budo in the 1930s, where H.M. Grace, the then headmaster of Budo, introduced a separate school which was called the Central School at Namutamba in 1934. And according to Canon Grace, this school was basically to teach agricultural skills. And boys who were less academically inclined at Budo would work out their own salvation depending on their initiative and enterprise. However, this move by Canon Grace to introduce a practically oriented curriculum meant for students who are less academically capable was rejected by the students and parents at Budo. A case in point was at a conference at Namirembe, where a son of Sapolo Kagwa noted that the chiefs sent their boys to schools not to drive bullock wagons and look after cattle, but they learned to be fitted for posts of high standing. Canon Grace is trying to educate them for slavery work, end of quote. So by implication, all we're trying to say here is, as we blame and criticize missionary and colonial education for the too much provision of literal or academic education, we must also extend the blame in an equal manner to the Africans who kept on demanding for this particular type of education. And going through all this, because of time, we see that from independence times or on the eve of independence still, vocational education was advocated for, and this was when the Debansen Committee made changes to practical skills. However, after independence, we are seeing another shift, that after independence, there is a vacuum, and the departure of many British civil servants after independence and also creation of many ministries leave an abundance of administrative jobs. So the curriculum at this time changes, and people are training to fill up these vacant jobs. However, later on in 1968, during Obote I government, there were challenges of unemployment, and this called for a rethinking and reorganization of the curriculum. And on this, yes?
Your time is up.
Oh, God.
You should be saying your last statement.
So my last statements on this is, throughout the history of education in Uganda and throughout the different governments, the post-colonial governments, we see that basically it's the employment opportunities and possibilities of the time that keep on determining students' aspirations and also in a way influence educational policies in the country. So we see that the evolution of education provision is always influenced by the aggregate private demand, and such demand is rooted by people's perceptions. I beg to stop there. Chair, I beg to stop there.
Okay, thank you, Anatoly, for the presentation. I'm still reminding members that if you have any questions, comments about Anatoly and Pamela's presentation, please post them in the chat room or in the Q&A. We shall discuss them at the end. So we have a second presenter, and this presenter is going to talk about the historical challenges of educational development in Uganda through the major regimes that we have witnessed. And that is Obote, Amin, and Museveni regimes. Can I take this opportunity to welcome Basilio Kamia? Please, you're welcome.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Kamia Basilio. I'm a PhD student in the Department of Development Studies.
Pamela, please exit.
I'm a PhD student in Department of Development Studies, College of Humanities and Social Science, Makerere University. The paper I am presenting to you is part of my bigger ongoing PhD project. Historical challenges of education development in Uganda, the era of President Obote, Amin, and Museveni. The main purpose of this paper is to analyze the historical challenges that hindered the development of education in Uganda during the era of President Obote, Amin, and Museveni, and to identify the possible solutions to these challenges with the aim of developing education in Uganda. The background to my study: education development of any country is based on political, economic, and social progress. Therefore, it is important for any government to take the responsibility of improving its education programs by giving education extra attention over other sectors, because education reflects the development of societies. Since Uganda's independence in 1962, one of the most persistent problems facing education development in the country is the problem of civil wars. Uganda has experienced a series of civil wars since its independence in 1962, with each successful regime facing a wide range of labor groups fighting to rule the country. Since the first military coup in 1966, Uganda has been through waves of armed conflict in several regions of the country, mostly in the central, western, the Great North, including some parts of eastern Uganda, and the Karamoja region in the northeast. The situation has been worse for northern Uganda, where the conflict between President Museveni's government and the Lord Resistance Army labor led by Joseph Kony has persisted since 1987. The education sector suffered considerably during this conflict. Schools expected to provide protection and security for the pupils, and students turned out to be recruiting grounds for the rebels. Rebels attacked schools and kidnapped students and teachers, whom they later recruited into rebel army. The conflict led to the closure and displacement of most schools in northern Uganda, and after the conflict, the people of Uganda needed a plan and an educational policy that can address the education gap in the country. Study methodology. The methodology of this study was purely qualitative in nature. Data was obtained from semi-structured interviews and documentary review. Interviews were conducted from policymakers, former and current members of parliament, cabinet ministers, education commissioners from Ministry of Education and Sports, district education officers, and senior inspectors of schools from 4 districts, that is Mukono, Bushenyi, Mbare, and Lila. Head teachers and teachers from Uganda Matters Junior School, Uganda Matters Junior Boys School, Namiryango, Namagunga Primary Boarding School, Nabumali, Buranyange, and Ba Primary School. Documents reviewed included government policy documents, master plan for post-conflict recovery of northern Uganda, and other government publications, newspaper articles, books with relevant literature on education and conflict. I also carried out a comprehensive online search of journals, books, and dissertations were thoroughly reviewed. Access to these documents were achieved by visits to Ministry of Education and Sports Library, Makerere University Main Library, Africana Section, National Curriculum Development Center Library, the National Records Center and Archive, District Archives of Jinja, Hoima, Fort Portal, and Parliamentary Library. Other publications were available on the official website and accessed through Google Scholar search. Interviews conducted were audio taped and transcribed. Data constructed during the study was organized, sorted, and analyzed. After the results were sorted and paraphrased, they were reported in the research report. Study findings. The study revealed that the United Nations General Assembly of 1948, which adopted the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, Article 26 of Universal Declaration of Human Rights, stating that everyone has the right to education, and education should be free at least the elementary and the fundamental stage. At this time, Uganda's education system was still in the hands of colonialists, and the education was accessed by only a few individuals. In 1963, to overcome this problem, Castro Commission was appointed to evaluate the system and identify a solution to improve the educational system. Although the recommendations were made to promote primary education, promote agriculture, technical education, and expand of girls' education, provision of adult education between 1971 and 1986, retro was attained. This was due to the fact that the country went through a period of political conflict, which affected key social services such as communication, health services, and education. In 1971, there was a military coup in Uganda, which is the country into civil wars. These affected the education sector in the country. The country was under military rule up to 1979. This period was interrupted by insecurity, economic sanctions, and diplomatic isolation. The status of primary education subsector in Uganda was characterized as extremely poor. For instance, the allocation of funds to the education sector declined from 3.4% to 1.4% of the annual budget between 1971 and 1979, while most of the burden of financing education was left for the parents to bear. Infrastructure had been completely destroyed. Teachers' salary had dropped below the minimum wage. Above all, management and planning of education was inadequate at all levels of education, while the curriculum and the related assessment systems were outdated. Being a university graduate or professor during Amini's regime was almost a sin. He considered education as being, educated as being corrupt and proud for nothing. During the period, there was no emphasis on education, and government policy was to equip the army with weapons rather than the nation with brains. It should be noted that Amini's regime did not give much attention on education, although towards the end, Muslims were empowered with resources to start primary schools so that their children can be employed in the government. This was the period when Asians were also forced out of the country, although they were significant forces in the education sector. Some had established and operated some of the best performing primary schools such as Madivan, Norman, and Aga Khan. Others had worked in educational service, in education civil service as secondary teachers and university lecturers. This state of affairs resulted in severe shortage of secondary teachers, shortage of institutional materials, and rising cost of educational equipment, all of which undermined the educational structure inherited from the colonial government. Idi Amin's government viewed the educated people as a threat. He killed a number of prominent people, including some university professors. These barbaric actions against the educated population created fear, and many escaped into exile, resulting into massive brain drain, leading to the collapse of the education system in the country. While the events between 1971 and 1979 had a significant effect on public service delivery, education was not as severe impacted as always reported, according to Heinemann. To him, there was double enrollment to primary schools between 1969 and 1979, from 600,000 to 1.2 million school learners. Other achievements during this period were the creation of the National Curriculum Development Center in 1973, with its central responsibility being the development and the implementation of primary and secondary curriculum throughout the country. It was also made responsible for determining the curriculum content and appropriate teaching methodologies, and overseeing the development of appropriate textbooks and learning aids. It was also made responsible for determining the curriculum content and appropriate teaching methodologies, and overseeing the development of appropriate textbooks and learning aids. The other landmark associated with this period was the launch of the new curriculum. Yes?
Mr. Basilio, you have 5 minutes left.
Okay, Chair. In 1975, this placed a significant emphasis on science, mathematics, and practical subjects such as agriculture, carpentry, bricklaying, mat making, blacksmith, and vocational skills. Also, on realizing that the earlier educational policies and recommendations set by the Castro Commission were weak by the military regime, it was considered fit to review the whole education system. The government indicated that such policies were set up by commissions led by colonialists. This did not reflect the wills and the wishes of Ugandan Native community. To this end, in 1977, an Educational Policy Review Commission was established. Unfortunately, the works of the commission were interrupted by another military overthrow of the government that had taken over power in a coup. Findings of the report were left to gather dust and house cockroaches. Uganda's education sector continued to suffer even after the Liberation War of 1979, since the country remained politically unstable throughout the early 1980s. The Obote II regime was politically stable after Amin's regime of suffering. The regime embarked on recovery. For example, Obote's 10-year development plan provided for upgrading the basic level of teacher education, promoting day schools rather than the boarding schools, decentralizing the education administration, and a plan to diversify the curriculum. The overthrow of Obote's government by General Tito Okello, who was the army commander in Obote's government in 1985, interrupted the 10-year educational development plan. In 1986, another guerrilla military group led by the current president, Yoweri Museveni Kaguta, captured power in an armed struggle. All this armed struggle injured the educational infrastructure in the country. Most of the schools were destroyed and looted, and the insurgents prevented runners from attending school. Moreover, most of the structures that were responsible for implementing educational policy did not have the chance to do so, as all government effort and available resources were directed towards fighting the war. The situation was worse in 1987 during the armed conflict between Uganda government and the Lord's Resistance Army in northern Uganda. During the last 2 decades, there was a complete breakdown in public and social services such as education, health, agriculture, security, transport, and communication. The 21 years of conflict in northern Uganda was the longest ever in the history of Uganda, where the Lord Resistance Army labor imposed the terrible murders and caused great suffering to the people of northern Uganda and eastern Uganda. According to the UN Under-Secretary General of Humanities, Affairs and Emergency Relief.
You have 1 minute left, so you should be saying your last statements.
Okay. The prolonged conflict raised a number of questions to why it persisted so long. Could there have been a plan of silence? The education sector suffered mostly during this conflict because while the schools were expected to provide protection and safety for the pupils and students, it turned out to be the recruiting grounds for the labor groups. Schools were attacked, students and teachers were kidnapped and forcefully recruited into the labor army. The conflict led to the closure and displacement of most of the schools in northern Uganda. Schools were transferred to internally displaced camps so that they could be given protection by military, while other schools were hosted by the schools in relatively safe areas. For example, during the insurgency in northern Uganda, Gulu High School hosted Goma Secondary School, and others. It should be noted that during the insurgency in northern Uganda, the labor attacked and kidnapped students and destroyed schools with very little resistance from community. Local people were not well equipped to defend the schools. Even those who were involved in guarding the schools used inferior weapons and could not resist the rebels who had better weapons. Kidnapping of students was a situation that could have been prevented by fencing the school's premises. For example, students of Sacred Heart Secondary School in Gulu were kidnapped 3 times during the insurgency because the school did not have a wall or a fence. Similarly, in 1996 at St. Mary's College in Lira, where 149 girls were kidnapped by the Lord's Resistance Army labor. Some of the girls were later released. The label released the rest of the girls except for 30 girls, and 4 of the girls were reported to have become wives to the labor leader Joseph Kony. Over a period, some of the girls were saved. 2 of the 4 wives of labor leader died in the custody. And the last girl, who was also a wife to Kony, finally returned home in March 2009. Approximately 25,000 children were kidnapped by the Lord's Resistance Army during the course of the war, and 63% of the primary schools in Gulu, Kitgum, Padel, Lila, and Apache district of northern Uganda were non-functioning due to the forced displacement. As a result of continuous conflict, education has suffered a great deal. Schools have been forced to close down, reduce teaching hours, and teachers are forced to find safe teaching environment. In the Kitgum district, 80% of the schools were displaced.
Basilio, I think I'm going to mute you. Okay. You will give us that summary when we are discussing.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you for the presentation. Yeah, thank you for that great presentation.
Thank you.
So members, we are moving to our third presenter, who is Ms. Anne Ampaire, who is looking at the possibility of students' career aspirations being predictors of their career choices in secondary school and university transitional years. So I take this opportunity to welcome Ms. Anna Mpire from the School of Psychology to start her presentation. Thank you.
Hello.
Hello. Can we see your face? Mr. Kasa, okay. Can we please see your face?
Has it come?
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. Give me just a minute. I open my document. Is my slide being shared?
Not yet. Mr. Kasaga, can you help us exit Basilio from the screen? Basilio, can you exit the screen?
Nobody is sharing. She can share. Nobody is sharing.
My document.
Doctor, you have to click on that green screen which has a share, and you will see a selection of your document if you have opened it.
Why does it matter to look at how mental because
unmute yourself as well. You have muted yourself. Please unmute yourself. You have muted yourself.
Anne, can you? Yes.
How do I share the document? I've opened it.
Okay, now go on Zoom and click on that green stuff, a box which has an arrow in it, a green one. It has screen share.
I go on Zoom.
Yeah, you click on share. It is green, the icon which is green. You see where it is chat, raising the hand and what? You're able to see that?
I don't know, has it come?
It
Yes.
has come now. That's it.
Is it full screen?
Yes, it's full screen.
Okay, thank you, Chair and the co-presenters. I'm Mpire Ann, educational psychologist, School of Psychology, Makerere University. I conducted this study in trying to investigate whether students' career aspirations predict their career choices at different transitional levels. Transitional levels, I was looking at those stages where students make critical career choices. In our education setup, these are O-level, A-level, and other tertiary colleges or universities. Career path is a fundamental milestone in a student's life. The path that one takes or a student takes has a lasting mark on their destiny, so that any mistake made in that process, in most cases, it might be irreversible, or it might be costly to address. Hence the need for sufficient career guidance strategies. Career aspiration is critical in career decision making. Aspirations are expectations and hopes students have about their destiny or future satisfaction, or you can call it success. These aspirations are modeled by a number of factors, not limited to childhood experiences, social cultural orientations, gender, life roles, you can mention them. Career choice, I can say that it is a triad, implying that having a student on one side, a triad, a triangle, on the one angle having a student, another angle having environmental factors like school, and another which is critical, parents and family. And therefore, that environmental stimulus having a reciprocal relationship on the interaction between the student and the learner largely affects or influences the aspirations and later decisions of the student or of the learner. Although a lot has been done in terms of the context of career development and career choice in Uganda, our country, Uganda, is increasingly facing difficulties in trying to implement career-related strategies, especially in schools, not in secondary schools, not forgetting tertiary and colleges. Largely, this can be attributed to inadequate career personnel, limited access to career information, failure to prioritize career choice as a critical social phenomenon, to mention but a few. In secondary schools, for example, career choice is addressed during or shortly before registration of examination. And that one makes it inadequate. Not forgetting the fact that even that career guidance or help that is given is majorly viewed in terms of selection of schools, selection of subjects and their combinations, study or academic programs when it comes to tertiary and other higher institutions, which still makes it limited in terms of career-related issues of the learner. Very little has been, very little attention has been directed towards students' abilities, interests, career opportunities, networking, career aspiration, and mentorship. That is where I'm coming from to say that it is limited, because it is leaving out those key factors that actually influence career choice. Now, to answer the question of whether students' career aspirations predict their choices, 3 predictors of career aspirations were considered. These are financial remuneration, employment prospects, and opportunity for career growth. The methodology that was adopted was purely a qualitative design, where 2 traditional regions of Uganda, Eastern and Northern, were purposely selected. Why Northern? Because a study by the Minister of Gender, Labor and Social Development in 2015 highlighted that the socio-economic challenges had seriously affected these 2 regions of the country. And as such, it had affected, those challenges had affected students' enrollment, their completion rate, the dropout rates, and generally contributing to high mass wastage that we are having. Participants were randomly selected from 16 secondary schools in Uganda. That implies 8 schools per region. The school composition in that selection, it was cognizant of sex, gender, that is male, female, ownership, being private or government, location, whether rural or urban, status in terms of whether the schools were day, were boarding, or from those categories, but bearing in mind the other characteristics. This became the inclusion criteria. An interview schedule was used for data collection. With prior consent from the participants, students' narratives were recorded and later coded, and then after transcription, the themes developed. In terms of results, the results were aligned according to the three predictors, which I've already talked about: financial remuneration, employment opportunities, and opportunity for career growth and development. However, in those voices or narratives, unique challenges came up, unique narratives emerged. And actually in those narratives, they were students' challenges. These were the findings. 95% of the students actually expressed that they were aspiring for careers perceived to be highly rewarding with the high financial returns. They desired careers with a lot of money, although that is relative, but that's what they were saying. That because, and these students actually had their own ranking and grading of which options, which subjects, which courses were key, were good. For instance, most of them were saying medicine, engineering, law, accountancy. When you go that way, then you'll be loaded in terms of occupation. 89% looked for personal satisfaction. When it came to employment prospects, 88% of the participants focused on employability, availability of jobs, accessibility of jobs, because most of them were saying they don't have time to just go on the streets. On each of these, what I highlighted in blue, those were some of the captions, but because of time, which I cannot read, some of the captions from the students' narrative to emphasize the point. With professional development or career growth, it was actually the least desired profession. I mean, this desired predictor, whereby most of them were saying that those who aspire for professional development, they want to be academicians, consultants, they want societal respect, that some of them actually gave examples in their narratives that although teachers don't earn much, but at least ever in society, they'll keep calling you master or mistress, madam, madam. So most of them were saying they don't want to go there. That's why it was among the list. Now, I have said that there were some unique narratives, meaning that those were the dissenting voices who are not actually accruing to the three predictors. And those are the ones that I called unique narratives. These are themes in the analysis they were developed. I've already talked about financial remuneration, employment prospects, and professional development. But in terms of unique narratives, students were saying that, however, some students and good percentages, they were actually saying that for them, they were not driven by the three, but their interests, their ability, their cutoff issues, gender biases, subject combination, sponsorship issues, biased career options. So all those came out in the unique challenges, which I called career challenges that are facing students in their career process. And these are the ones that I was mentioning with some of the narratives in red, actually saying that even though some of the career teachers or helpers who are providing guidance, they would be biased, telling you, you cannot afford this. You are a girl, you can't afford this. You are a male, you can afford this. So those are some of the unique challenges that were found. In conclusion, this study notes the fact that students' choices are actually not made haphazardly, the way we went into the field thinking. Although they could be biased decisions, but some of them know why they make choices. Most of the students have expectations. Although these expectations, they need guidance.
Madam Anne, you have 1 minute.
Because it could be due to the altered that, hello?
You have 1 minute.
Okay, I'm winding up, thank you. The three predictors, thank you. The three predictors influence most of students' career choice making as the study anticipated. The study recommends emphasis on career support strategies and effective guidance, and to stop reinforcing social cultural stereotypes. Now, reflecting on the current pandemic as I wind up, as the recommendation actually, which is key, this pandemic should help those who are providing career guidance to rethink the strategies so that in the minds of the learners, the mindset should change from the question which has been, what does the career world offer? It should be, what do I bring to the career world, as opposed to what the career world should give me or what I should get. That will minimize unemployment issues, will minimize challenges that we are facing, will minimize a lot. I thank you all. May God bless you.
Thank you, Ms. Anna Mpaire, for that eye-opening presentation. It was very clear, systematic. I'm sure all members have understood. We shall be posting your questions later. I take this opportunity to invite our last presenter. She's called Mercy Mirembe Ntangare, and she's presenting on the global trends in doctoral education, something that we are all interested in because this is a headache. So it would be very interesting for us to listen to what she says are the implications of the global trends doctoral education for the traditional disciplines in the humanities at Makerere University. So Mercy Ntangare, I welcome you. You have 15 minutes. I'm aware you came late, so you have only 15 minutes for presentation. Thank you. And you can exit the screen.
Where do I go?
Mr. Kasaga, can you help Anne to exit? But in the meantime, Mercy, please begin. It seems I don't see Mercy. Mercy has escaped again.
Okay, you said I help you. Who?
Anne needs to exit the screen.
I need to exit screen.
Oh, okay. No, you are not there. You have exited.
Okay, then where is Mercy? I no longer see Mercy.
I think she needs to join again.
Mase Mirembe.
She must have got some internet issues again. She's not even in the attendee side.
No, she's not.
Maybe we can proceed as we wait on her.
Okay, she was the last presenter. I will start with the easiest question. Somebody was asking Miss Anna Mpaire. Let me read to you the question. But if Mercy appears, you will inform me. Miss Anne, what do you think would be the best level of education if the intervention of career guidance is to be taken seriously as an informer and an intervention for proper career prediction and career choices? When you look at our formal education levels, when do these aspirations begin? And therefore, when do you think career guidance should begin?
So
I wanted to read to you all the questions because you just have 3 minutes for all of them.
Okay.
There is Ruereka. Someone says, besides the careers traditionally referred to as formal employment, what else did the concept of career mean for the students?
Okay.
Then Lillian Imbabas is saying, yes, thank you for the great exploration into this aspect. And the unique narratives are interesting. So she's appreciating what you have presented. It's not a question. Then there is Viola who says she would love to hear statistics about the students' preferences between arts and sciences. Maybe that is recommendation for future studies. And somebody else called Emily Drani says, thank you, Anna Mpira, for your presentation and for highlighting the real issues that students grapple with in making career choices. So generally, it was a great presentation, but personally, I would like to know, if I have a child, when do I begin career guidance in relation to your variables?
Okay, thank you. Am I on?
Yes.
Thank you. Well, career guidance, career is basically the way of life. Someone asked about, I'll take them together. Someone asked about the context of the students. It is a way of life, because if you're looking at your destiny, your life satisfaction, it is a hope, it is a dream. So career guidance actually should start as early as possible. When we say senior 3, senior 2, that is already too late. When we say P7, already too late. If you talk to kindergarten children, they already have fantasies, career fantasies, which only need to be, twisted a little bit. And actually, what is interesting, to some of those kindergarten kids, their fantasies, they come to be true later in life, in their adult life. So I should say, Chair, that career guidance should, if need be, or if possible, should start as early as possible. I cannot target an age. When children are at home, seeing what is going on, seeing the environment, when they are watching media, when their minds are growing, they are looking at celebrities, social whatever. So they need to be guided along the way, so that by the time they start schooling, actually, they begin pondering on what they need to be. The more reason why advanced countries, the so-called, although in decolonization, I think that should go, the so-called advanced world, for them, they identify these children early enough. We need to do that.
Okay, thank you, Anne. Mr. Kasaga, I think we have a hacker who is sending abusive messages in the chat room. I hope you've noted that. Then Madam Anne, we have two important questions in the Q&A. Maybe you can answer them in the chat room because of time restrictions. Helena Mongin is saying Helena Mongin says the Directorate of Educational Psychology at the Ministry of Education and Sports has been in place for a long time, and yet the challenges of career choice still persist in the education system. What would you recommend should be the way forward? That is from Helena Mongin. And then Lillian Imbabazi says, what strategies do you propose to ensure that there is constructive career guidance for students, especially in secondary schools? So I think you can address those issues in the chat room because we are trying to save time.
Okay,
yes. And if Mase is not back as yet, I will move to another question for another presenter. Presenter number 1, you have a question from Anna Mpaire, and she says, do you presenters buy any leave or borrow any leave from the critics of education system in Uganda? And do you have any proposals for this to be made better? That is for Anatoly and Pamela. And then Luereka asks the same presenters and says, what is hindering meaningful educational reforms and their implementation in Uganda? So Pamela and Anatoly, I don't know if you can address those questions verbally or you can post your answers in the chat room so that the ones asking can read them. Think about them. And then for presenter number 2, who I remember as Basilio, there are some questions. There's a question from Mark, and he says, what are some of the drivers or causes of the curriculum struggles that we keep facing in the different regimes? And personally, I was asking you at the end, although at the end you addressed it, I said, can you summarize the challenges that the education system keeps experiencing in these transitional governments or regimes? And then someone says, what are the commonalities and dissimilarities in all these education era regimes? So I don't know if some of the presenters have answers already that they can address verbally. We are still waiting for Mase. She's nowhere to be seen. Does anybody see Mase among the people attending?
No. Yes, I'm here finally. Sorry about the disconnection that I got.
Mase. Our session ends at it ends at 1:40. It's now 1:15. You have 15 minutes to present. So you're presenting from 1:15 to 1:30. The other presenters, the ones I read to your questions, be preparing brief answers, which we'll discuss after Mase's presentation. Mase, you're welcome.
Thank you very much, Chair, for giving me this opportunity, and the participants. I will make sure that I try to finish within that time. Now, because of this, I'm using a phone because I failed to connect through the computer. But I had sent my slides in, and now I'm fearing if I'm going to add on presentation, the phone itself may disconnect. Yeah, my presentation, I had sent it to the committee because I didn't get your emails. Otherwise, of course, I can go on and present.
Yes.
Somehow. Okay, my topic is global trends in doctoral education, implications for disciplines in the humanities. I had added on the humanities level there. Now I'm thinking that this traditional disciplines I'm referring to here courses These disciplines are traditional because they have stayed traditional in the way they deliver and generate knowledge. If I use my one example of my own discipline in drama, if I would be expected to write a script following Aristotle's guidelines on script writing, and then I would make sure that that script, I look for a producer to produce it, and then it will take like 6 months under production, and I will market it through a theater, the box office, the house, and so on. In other words, we normally follow questions in traditional courses, and some of these fail to transform, not change, but transform. The doctorate, I regard the doctorate as the highest of a doctorate. Of course, this may be different.
Marcel, please note that we can hardly hear you. Maybe you should keep your phone in a stable position. You're breaking. Oh my God.
Now my phone is actually next to my face almost.
Now you're clear.
So present. Yeah, so I was saying that the doctorate is the highest level of academic training. And why am I concerned with the doctorate? We know that Makerere University has a strategic plan 2020-2030, and that strategic plan focuses on the university to be a knowledge hub in the heart of Africa by the year 2030. So I regard the doctorate as the easiest way to enter that knowledge hub and the knowledge industry generally, knowledge economy and production. And two, I also think that it's the best way for us as academicians to secure and sustain our place and our home in the knowledge hub at Makerere University, but also globally. When I look at the academia, there are two ways we exist, hence two ways we may need to transform towards the needs, or to meet the needs of today's world. The academia has two axes. One is vertical, where we read for undergraduate degrees, then we go to graduate degrees, and of course, as I said, the last degree or the topmost is the doctorate. That is the vertical axis. But the horizontal axis, which is equally important, will involve especially the academic now who has entered the system of the university. He or she gets initiated because he or she is a novice, continues to grow and become independent and professional, will mature and begin mentoring other academia or other students or supervise. And then, of course, as we mature, we also are mindful that we decline, and then the university or the government will retire us. So in today's presentation, I actually want to link the vertical axis and see how it is applied on the horizontal side. We know that there are 5 known types of doctorates as we speak. There is a PhD by research, which is the traditional one, which we do at Makerere. Mostly, we do research and dissertation, of course, with the supervisor, and we hand in. The second type is PhD by publication, which is based on peer-reviewed articles, and the candidate writes an introduction and a conclusion. The third type is the practice-based doctorate, where the candidate does a research project in creative or performing or visual cinematic arts, and with texts explaining the theory and the motivations for that project. The fourth one is the professionate, which is largely applied and based on the work one is doing. It combines, of course, coursework and also supervised projects. And there is one which is called the new route PhD, which is gaining popularity, where the candidate, the PhD candidate, is exposed to various learning experiences. In mostly these are international universities, where they go and spend maybe 2 months in one university, another 3 months in another, and then at the end combine all these experiences and write down their PhD project. Of course, this degree has this type of degree has come up in order to meet the student's personal needs and professional development needs. Now, when I look at where we are as Makerere, and of course our question, which I said I want to answer is, with our strategic plan of becoming a knowledge hub in the heart of Africa, what is the place of choice in this hub? Which route will lead us in choice to the hub, which we identify in the larger hub of Makerere? And what could be the signposts that would use to follow? Then, of course, this one brings into play the question of the PhD training we offer currently and their implications, therefore, for this PhD program that we offer, the one of research and dissertation. Then, what model would be ideal among the 5 that are presented, even in the short run, for us in the humanities to present? This one comes against the backdrop of too many candidates now seeking PhDs, yet we know that there are too few slots in the academia. We know also that outside the academia, there are fewer research positions. The PhD itself does not improve the individual welfare or social welfare of the candidate, nor does it contribute visibly to national development. Although, of course, the benefits are there, but they are not easily seen. And this one makes almost the PhD becoming a status symbol. And of course, due to dwindling government funding, the PhD is largely privately sponsored. So in this presentation, I'm seeking to answer those questions as I've said. I'm seeking to answer the question of where is choose in this hub. In other words, challenge ourselves at choose to try to generate the knowledge, because one of the ways, as I've said, is, or the easiest way is through the doctorate. And of course, once we reach this knowledge hub, what then, or even as we work towards it, what then are we likely to train our PhD candidates in? I finish by not predicting, but hoping that as we transform, we are transforming for relevancy. We are transforming in order to conform with the trends, because a trend is, yes, a short-term thing, but normally it comes up because there is a demand for it and people have what is in the trend. And 3, I hope that we shall transform as we redefine our position. How can we do this? There are 3 things which I'm just mentioning. Point 1, envision the future and work backwards to the present where we are. This one would make us systematically move forward. 2, we can adopt any of the types of PhDs and then adapt it for our own use. And the third possibility of our transformation or the method to transform would be to overhaul the programs of the PhD we have and start afresh. Thank you very much. I had a table in the presentation. I don't know if I can share it. How many minutes do I have? That I try to share the screen?
You have only 1 minute. Is that enough?
No, but that table had, in other words, would fill in and say, we can take it home. There's no problem. It's a take home. What type of degree, PhD degree is ideal for us and why? That was the exercise I had wanted us to do. Otherwise, thank you very much and all the best.
Thank you. Thank you, Marcel. Better late than never. That was clear. It's an interesting study. I would like to hear more about those other types of PhDs that I'm hearing for the first time. I don't know if they apply to our area. I read questions to members who had presented previously as we waited for Marcel, and I'm encouraging members to type their answers or responses in the chat room. Madam Anne was requesting that whoever posted questions in the Q&A should post it again in the chat room for her to respond. And you got an additional question. And someone is saying, is the home the most important component? I think he or she means environment in children's career shaping and building. And another one also asks, how does one discover the unsounding talents of a child at an early stage in trying to understand which basic advice in relation to career choice guidance? Pamela, who was the first presenter with the Anatoly, you got an additional question from Helena Mongin, who says, how can the negative attitude towards vocational education be changed in a globally changing world that advocates for practical skills that vocational education offers? So I'll start with Ampaire. Can you briefly, in 1 or 2 minutes, answer the questions that have been directed to you? Because it seems your area has really triggered people's thinking. I don't know if that is in terms of them as teachers or parents or both. Thank you. Unmute. And unmute.
Hello.
Yes.
Hello. You can hear me?
Yes.
Yes. The question for Pamela, which was attached to Amongin, I answered in the Q&A. Okay. However, I missed their first 2, which were key. The Amongin of Directorate of Psychology and Pamela, I think, was on attitude something. That's why I'd requested that they repost. Then yes. There was actually also from Bernard, who is saying that apart from the traditional career being viewed from a traditional perspective, how else can it be? And if I start with Bernard, actually I had started typing the answer for him. Let me start with him. That the traditional or the formalized construct of career is rooted in our historical nature of educational system. Prior to the formal education, we had vocational guide, we had vocation education, vocational and career education. But now the formal system, when it came in, they came with their own perspective for reasons which we are all aware. Our studies were, I'm glad those of you who are historicizing, you know that. So for their own reasons, they formalized the concept of career, which actually we should try, like in this era, we should try to deconstruct. We should try to reject that definition, because for them, they are institutionalized, their definition is institutionalized. Careers being pegged to subjects, careers being as if our great grandfathers did not have careers. So that is what we are trying to refuse, that the career is not, and that's why I said career is a way of life. Where you feed from, we should not go from the other long period of study, long period, how many are on street? That's why we are talking about unemployment. Now,
Thank you.
the first question you said was what? Is home the most, whether home is the most important component for
career shaping?
Definitely, it is one of the major factors, because a child is born and raised at home, given all other factors constant. So everything must be shaped and modeled from home. What the child sees, interacts with, hears, sings, eats, does, translates into a career. The kind of toys you give this child, the kind of colors, books, dresses, everything that starts from home and transits to school and community, it will shape. Parents who tell children, girl children, that you kneel as you greet, a boy child greets while standing, that one writes a lot on the mind of the child, and the impact is on the career choice. So I can say that yes, amongst the environmental factors, environment is key, but all other social, cultural, and economical factors or settings, because there are some children who may not have the privilege of having home, but where they are, what is a home? Where one lives, where one stays, regardless of whether it is a street or whatever. But in this case, I think we are talking about the family environment. So it is key, but it is not alone. That's why I said that in the triad, there is a reciprocal interaction to undo and yes. Another question, maybe I didn't capture it.
Okay, but let's give opportunity to other presenters. Pamela and Anatoly, is any of them around? Pamela and Anatoly, do you have any brief answers? Do you have any brief answers to the questions?
Yes, thank you, Chair. So one of the questions
Network. Okay, we've lost Pamela. Okay, you're back.
Just
you're breaking.
Any lift from the
I can't hear you, Pamela. I think your network has gone down. Okay, Basilio, do you have any brief response to questions posed to you? Basilio, come here.
Hello?
Basilio, do you have any brief answers to the questions that were posed to you?
Yeah, I can answer some right now.
In a maximum of 1 minute.
I'll post the answer. Like for your case, hello?
Yes, I'm hearing.
Like for your case, you wanted me to summarize the challenges in today's contest. One of the challenges, apart from the political conflict, it is the corruption tendencies. Corruption tendencies are so high in this regime compared to other regimes, the Amin and Obote regime. Corruption is a major problem in Uganda. it is condemned at all levels of education. For example, if government sends the capitation grant that is supposed to facilitate UPE schools, by the time it reaches the school, it is embezzled at every level where it passes. There is one scholar who even indicated it that 13% out of the capitation grant reaches the schools. So that corruption is too much in Uganda, and it undermines the development of education. In addition to that, there is inadequate facilitation. Inadequate facilitation from government is not enough to facilitate the development of education. The outbreak of epidemics like the current one, COVID-19, has also impacted the development of education. Like, for example, what you are saying, we would have discussed this. This conference would have been physical, but it is virtual because of the outbreak of COVID epidemic. AIDS also has impacted the development of education.
Okay. Pamela, are you back? Okay, can we give an opportunity to Pamela to summarize in 1 minute before they switch us off?
Okay.
Thank you, Basilio.
You're welcome.
Pamela, is your network better? She seems still muted. I didn't seem to see any question forwarded towards Marcel, both in the Q&A and in the chat room. So I think if Pamela members who kept sending in questions and reactions and appreciations, we appreciate you. For those of you who are PhD students, we wish you the best of luck. Thank you and have a good afternoon.
Thank you too.
Well, thank you all. Thank you all. And bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Maybe Chair, before you drop. Hello?
She's off already.
She has already dropped.
Yeah.
Because I wanted to send in my email so that those people whose questions I had not answered, they can repost and then I answer them. Is it okay?
Yeah, I think you can put it here in the Q&A.
I put it in the Q&A.
Yeah. For those who are still on.
Where exactly?
It is down there.
No, I've seen it, but I've seen it, but where do I type?
Just click on it and the provision for typing comes. You click on type answer.
I don't have it. I have only done.
When you click up, there is open to and the answered, something like that.
Open?
On top.
I've clicked on top.
Yes. There is something type answer.
There is open.
They are saying that you can say it out.
I'm going to type it to Chris so that if you know, then you send it out.
Okay.
Is it okay?
It's fine.
Okay. Oh, Jesus Christ. Okay. I've sent it. So I wish they could repost the questions so that we interact.
Okay, bye-bye.
You have seen it? Chris, you have seen it?
Yes, yes.
Okay, so you help me send it to them, whoever has a query.
All right, all right.
Thank you, bye, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.